Welcome back to Master the Marketplace with Caspian. Welcome to another episode of Master the Marketplace. Well, 2020 is over, 21 has started, and what a year 2020 has been. COVID full year is what I call it. There's been just so much going on in our space as it relates to e-commerce, the changing landscape. 10 years of e-commerce has happened overnight. That's what experts say. And speaking of experts, we've got two on our podcast today, Kelsey Gruis and Megan Lauterbach from Caspian, who are going to talk about how the year has evolved and how 21 and what 21 is going to bring for us. So there's a lot to discuss about trends in e-commerce as it relates to 21, as it relates to 22, and how this space is going to evolve. And we're going to chat a lot about e-commerce and 21. So welcome to the show, both Megan and Kelsey.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Good to be back.
Good, I know. So let's start with just some introductions first. So Kelsey, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, the work you do at Caspian.
Yeah. So like Kunal mentioned, my name is Kelsey Gruis. I've been with Caspian actually 6 years in a couple days here. So quite a while, which is great. I've done a few different things within Caspian. Ultimately, where I'm at now is sort of transitioning out of our agency management space and moving into managing our sales team or our business development team. So what that means for me is I have a very in-depth knowledge of all things Caspian, specifically in agency, but owning the sales team, really working with those folks to make sure all the brands that we'll potentially partner with have a good understanding of Caspian and how we can work with them as well.
Fantastic. And Megan, what about you?
Yes, so I'm Megan Lauterbach, and I've been with Caspian 7 years. Just had my 7th year anniversary, so been here for a little bit. Like Kelsey, I've done a variety of things, but today I am the general manager of our retail business and overseeing our account managers that directly work with the brands to really help launch their brands on all of the third-party marketplaces. So from the retail side, I support Amazon US, Amazon International, Walmart, Target, eBay, all of the up-and-coming marketplaces.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to the show. So I've got to start by asking both of you, Kelsey and Megan, how was fiscal year 20 for you? How did you feel, as you went through the year? I know it was a very difficult year, and some say, e-commerce has helped companies like Caspian, but I know it's a different story from the inside. So tell me, how did the year go for you folks?
Man, I feel like there was nothing I could have anticipated within this year, honestly. I think I feel like it happened in a blink of an eye. I think our brand partners that we partnered with feel the same way. It was like 2 days ago, I was like, man, I am just tired because 2020 in the space that we're in was really fast moving, but regardless of who you are, 2020 was a whirlwind. And I feel like we felt that for sure. So I'm looking forward to 21. I think there were some really good things that came out of 20, and I'm sure we'll talk about those today. But ultimately, it was a whirlwind. And like I said, I feel like I just couldn't have anticipated almost anything that came of it.
Exactly. Kelsey hit it a nail on the head. It was nothing I could have ever anticipated. From Amazon restricting entire categories because they had too much demand, to them prioritizing MFN offers over FBA because they couldn't get the goods out to consumers, to Walmart, far exceeding any expectations. It was a wild year, but like Kelsey, when I take a minute and look back on it, I'm really proud of us as a company and all of the teams at Caspian for their ability to pivot and maneuver through such a crazy time. I mean, our partners, their warehouses closed down this year, but yet they still needed those sales to support their business and, getting goods from overseas and how can we forecast better? It's nothing that I could have ever have thought we would experience in such a short period of time. But 2021 is really exciting for me because I think we have all the pieces to be such a great brand partner in helping brands continue to pivot through it, because unfortunately the fact of the matter is just because 2020 is gone, some of the lingering effects are still moving into 2021. So I feel really excited to be able to help brands continue to pivot and expand their business.
Fantastic.
Just really quickly, I think even our brands pivoted really well. I was thinking as you were talking, Megan, we had quite a few brands that we partner with and have for a long time who did some really cool things, even though they were like, trying to figure out their distribution lines and trying to figure out how they're getting inventory. They're also like creating masks in some examples, and we were able to help them get those to the front line, which I think is really cool. Just, I don't know. I think you're right. Just a lot happened, but we pivoted well. But I also think our brands did a really good job of not only pivoting for the space that they're in, but taking on some additional responsibility and like, let's get some masks out for one example.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
that's been the story for a lot of companies out there, right? The ones that have pivoted quickly were able to survive through the pandemic, through any trends that they saw changing. And so it's probably just an example for folks even going into 21 is, are you pivoting right now? Are you thinking about, what trends exist in your industry or in your business as you go into 21? And are you taking advantage, of those? Okay, so let's talk about trends then. There's so many that are out there. And I know one big trend that experts have been talking about and would love to get your thoughts on is just this concept of the competition on marketplaces such as, Amazon. In fact, there was an article that came out, I don't know if you read it, on Marketplace Pulse, that basically said 75% of all sellers on Amazon are from China, and as opposed to true US brands. And then the marketplace is flooded with a bunch of sellers from China that are trying to private label their products. And so I just want to get your thoughts on, your view on competition on the marketplace and what effect will that have on brands as we move into 21 and beyond.
Absolutely. The competition on Amazon is fierce. Like that is just, I think every brand will say that. And making sure that you have a good pulse on what competitors are doing, the new entrants, the old entrants, how your marketing is stacking up against theirs is very imperative. We've done a variety of deep dives for brands over the years where we start to see a little bit of slip in the market share that they have. And the first thing that we go to is what new entrants are in the market and where are they populating in the marketing space. And typically what we'll see is that they come in strong with a lot of dollars and they're outbidding. So we need to put together a defensive strategy for our brands for a period of time to help them regain that, because ultimately a lot of the brands that we've done this for are a household name. They have a very strong loyal following and can survive over these new competitors, but really understanding where they're at, what are they spending, so that we can put together that strategy to help our brands maneuver through it. Without understanding that, I think a lot of brands that just kind of, set it and forget it will become obsolete, unfortunately.
That's right. That's right. Kelsey, your thoughts here?
I was just going to add, I echo that. I was just going to add too, it's not, that was our sort of immediate response to COVID, right? Is seeing how many brands were flooding the marketplace, but this was going to be an issue no matter what. So yes, it was accelerated, but what Megan said is exactly right. And we have to make sure that we are working with our brands, which we do, to make sure they're continuing to pivot. This isn't like let's evaluate the marketplace one time, re-strategize on marketing, and then it's set it and forget it. It's Amazon's constantly coming out with new marketing initiatives or tweaking existing ones just slightly. There's also like a ton more marketing outside of Amazon that we should be taking advantage of and helping our brands gain access to. And all of those things are important and I think really accelerated in the last year, but it has to be a part of your strategy going forward. And you have to be able to come out of the mindset of this has worked in the past, so this will continue to work. You have to be willing to take risks in some standpoint. You have to be willing to look at the data and what we've seen be successful for brands and work to implement it for yourselves, because it's not a set and forget it. It never has been, but especially now more than ever.
So speaking to that point, I mean, where does the role of omni-channel experiences now fall into? Like, should brands be thinking about, look, Amazon's crowded. We should really be thinking about our entire digital presence overall through multiple online channels, including direct to consumer through our own website. What do you think what are your thoughts on just this omni-channel like view? Should brands be taking that as they go into 21?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think one of the first things that comes to mind to me is, and you just mentioned it, Kunal, a majority of the sellers on Amazon or product is coming direct from China. And I think the consumer is getting smarter, and not that that's a bad thing or that's something to be concerned about, but a lot of people, especially with the changes we've seen in 2020, are really starting to take a position of brand loyalty. So if if I'm a brand and I just have a single threaded approach, or my approach doesn't match across all the different channels that I'm on, it can be a little bit concerning or confusing for a customer. And again, where I think Amazon used to be, it still is a really quick sale for a lot of customers and in turn for a lot of brands, but people are doing their research now. I mean, people are starting their shopping on Amazon, and that's been true for a while, but they're also validating it up against where else they've seen the product, whether it be an influencer or their direct website. So if you don't have a holistic approach, or you're not working to expand your reach, I think you'll see some issues as we go forward.
Megan, would love to get your thought on that as well, but specifically related to brand building, because I think Kelsey hit on a good point, which is how important building your brand is for you to get an edge relative to all these other players trying to get on into your category, for example. So what's your thoughts on brand building and how important that is?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I'm going to apologize for my coworker really fast. She obviously has to say on this topic too, but I do think I 100% agree with Kelsey that brand building is huge, and I think it's extremely important too, depending on the category that you're in. Customers want to be able to buy something that they are confident in, and the way that customers gain that confidence is by understanding the brand, being able to really assimilate and trust the products that they're getting. Where I think, what I've seen when I've even shopped on Amazon or elsewhere, and it is a kind of unbranded product, I put a stigma against it, right? I say, ooh, the quality must not be that good, or the product I'm getting may not be awesome. So really building that brand will help give that customer confidence to, one, continue to buy from your brand and really use that as a launching point of reoccurring purchases, but also really help kind of that entrance of acquiring your first customer. The other thing I was going to say on this is diversifying where you're selling your product, I think, has also become extremely important. So while Amazon's the 100-pound gorilla and you should continue to sell there, what we saw during COVID is that it took customers a long time to get product. And our customers nowadays are very accustomed to getting product, free shipping 2 days, even sooner. So if you're a brand, you don't want to put all of your eggs in the Amazon basket, because customers shifted where they were purchasing. They went to Walmart, they went to Target, and if you're not there, they're going to buy your competitor. And if Amazon can't continue to keep up on that speed, you might have lost that customer just because you simply weren't on the other marketplaces that they wanted to shop on.
So there seems to be also this debate out there in the industry around marketplaces versus direct to consumer through your own website. Like, what are your thoughts on how much attention a brand should give to building their own web presence through their own website, shopping on their website, direct to consumer, maybe using the Shopifys of the world? What are your thoughts there?
Oh, I can kind of go back and forth on it if I'm being honest. I think from a marketing standpoint, having your own website, doing, social marketing to come back to your website and really get the customer that branded experience and get them ingrained in your product and your story is really important. But also, the customer acquisition cost for something like that is incredibly high. Whereas if you were to just use the marketplaces, the customers are already there. The cost to acquire those customers are far less. But to Kelsey's point of building your brand and the importance of it in the future, it's almost going to become a necessity. I don't know if I could tell you you should put, 50% of your marketing budget to going direct to your brand or to Amazon. I don't know those pieces today, but it seems like the brands that are going to survive through this will have a strong presence in both places.
I also think it depends where you're at as a brand, right? I think what Megan said is especially true for brands who are a little bit more established, whether it be holistically or on Amazon, for example, only. But I think brands starting out, it's like I said, it's really important to build that brand awareness, and you have to have some sort of backup go-to so that me as a consumer, I can learn more information. And then no matter where I'm at when I've learned that information, I can purchase. Like, you don't want to add friction, right? So maybe I find your product on Amazon. I want to understand more about your brand. I land on your website. I should be able to purchase from there if that's ultimately where I want to make my decision. But there are ways that you can marry the two, right? Like, you can hook your direct site right up to Amazon or other marketplaces that you're on. So the fulfillment isn't necessarily coming from you, but your customer has that experience of being able to check out wherever they decide to purchase your product. So I think it's important to think about where you are as well. Whereas, like Megan said, a lot of the brands we work with really are household staples, like the name. And so if they want that brand, they'll ultimately figure out where they can buy it. But newer brands, I think there's a lot of customer learning that goes on. So making sure you have multiple places to learn about the product where it's consistent, and then ultimately be able to buy if that's the decision you make.
That's a great point. And you touched upon something that was kind of critical, which is the customer experience. And as COVID has taught us that the experience of maybe delivering a hygiene product in 2 days or same day shipping onto your doorstep was something that people expected. The convenience was such an important factor to a lot of consumers. Maybe folks who didn't shop online much, they now were forced to shop online because they were working from home. And so again, they got maybe exposed to a new experience. How important is customer experience going forward as we go into 21 and beyond? Because people were forced into a new experience at some level. And now will that demand for a strong customer experience continue to increase, which means the bar to deliver a strong customer experience gets higher? What are your thoughts on the experience for customers?
I think that it'll be incredibly important. I think what we saw is that the customers already had a bar, whether we knew it or not. And when Amazon couldn't hit those bars, they said, well, I'm going to go figure out a place that can. So I think the customer has opened their eyes to being able to shop online in a variety of different marketplaces in a variety of different ways. And they're going to continue to look to purchase from platforms that give them that experience that they want. I also think that customers are, looking for additional information in listings of products. I think that they're looking for better content. Like they're using the e-commerce marketplaces and direct websites to really inform what they're going to buy. Whereas before, maybe they found it in a brick and mortar store, touch it, felt it, and then they got home, thought about it, and then decided to purchase. They don't have that opportunity right now. So they're solely making their decisions based upon the information that is in front of them through all of these platforms. And if we don't step up the bar on the information that we're providing or being able to give them a more assimilated in-store experience, another brand could be, and you could be losing out customers in that way as well.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, right? Because your question, Kunal, which makes sense, is like how important is that customer experience, that user experience? But for these major marketplaces, Amazon, Walmart, eBay, wherever you are, you're a little bit limited in your ability, if you're a brand, to impact that, right? And granted, like Amazon is up there with the best of them. You can add to cart, you can buy now. It's really easy, but there's really only so much you can do in that realm. So I think what Megan said is like even more important, right? Because there are things as a brand, whether you're working, with a third-party retailer or an agency, that you can still impact. Like, how are you reaching out to your customer base that you already have, and what are we offering them, whether it be information or like loyalty programs or discounts? And those are things that you can impact, even selling on these major marketplaces that do have a standard for the checkout process specifically. So I think just what she said is incredibly important, because there's only so much you can impact. So you have to be extra diligent and strategic with what you can.
And Megan, you made another very good point around the in-store experience. Now, obviously, we're all sitting at home, we're shopping from home, grocery stores are open, we tend to go there. But as the vaccine comes in, as things open up more, what are your thoughts on just in-store retail? Will that open up to the same extent that it was pre-pandemic? And if it does, how will that change the experience for consumers as they continue to shop both online and offline? What are your thoughts on just opening up of the retail world?
Yep. So my thoughts really are that, at the very beginning, once people are like, okay, I can go out, we could see a pretty good surge in actual brick and mortar shopping. People have been cooped up at home. Like, it'll be a novelty for them again. They'll be excited to go do it. But when the novelty wears off and life continues to be busy, I think we will see the pendulum swing back to where we are today. You can't argue that it's more convenient to shop online and have it just show up at your house, especially, in our busy, crazy world. If you're a mom, if you're a dad, if you're working tons of hours, if, maybe you just want a few more minutes to yourself, this is the best way to do it. So while I think immediately customers will love to be able to go into the brick and mortar stores, I think we'll see them settle back into a very consistent purchasing pattern back online.
Right. And Kelsey, related to that point, I was talking to some research analyst recently, and he mentioned to me, he said, Kunal, I predict that, e-commerce is going to slow down in fiscal year 21 because things are going to open up and people are so cooped up at home, they just want to get out there. What are your thoughts on, do you think it's going to actually slow down or the pace of growth will continue or maybe slightly slow down? What are your thoughts there?
I think it's got to at least slightly slow down, right? I think we can agree that this last year isn't necessarily sustainable, or I would say that. I don't know if we can agree. Those are my thoughts. I agree with Megan that I think we'll see a fairly immediate slow whenever the vaccine is a little bit more widely out there and things truly start to open back up. But I personally, like, Target is delivering things to my door, and I don't know why I would ever stop that. Like, I can shop for groceries, I can get a sweater, and they're just dropping it off. And while I love like strolling the aisles of Target more than the next person, it's exactly what Megan said. It's so much easier. And now that I've gotten a taste of that, if I don't have to go back, I probably won't. But what I think is interesting based on people I've talked to, the brands I'm managing on the agency side, and just my own shopping habits is my e-commerce spending was in smaller segments, but much more consistent than if I had been shopping brick and mortar. So I sort of think that we'll continue to see that happen, meaning people aren't going online doing like a major haul on like Amazon or Walmart as much as they are, I know I can get this in 2 days and I need it now kind of thing. I'll just buy this one off. So that's my thought, is that it will slow a little bit. I think it will continue to be a huge part of, I mean, it's going to continue to like be a huge part of everyday lives, but I think it's going to slow a little bit from what we saw in 20, but I do think it'll still be like smaller orders, consistent or more frequently.
You make a good point. I've noticed that about my personal habits as well in my household is you tend to order groceries every few days as opposed to doing one big bulk,
Yeah.
in-store, grocery run. And so, it comes in less than a day to your doorstep. So, might as well just order it whenever you want. So
Yeah.
that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so now speaking of groceries and delivering that to my door in a few hours, fulfillment seems to be a big trend that we've seen in fiscal year 20. And it's also posed a bunch of challenges with all the things, Megan, you mentioned, I know initially. So how should brands prepare now as they go into 21, 22, and beyond for fulfillment? And how will that become maybe a competitive differentiator for them? How is fulfillment going to evolve? How important is it for brands?
Incredibly, that's how customers get the goods. I think that everything I learned this year is the more diversified you could be and how you could and your fulfillment options, the better off you're going to be. You'll will really position you to be able to pivot when one of your fulfillment opportunities isn't working the way that you know your customers need it to work. So I would recommend having many partners and maybe even being able to do it yourself to some degree so that you have more control over that customer experience.
And I think being nimble in how you think about it too. So, for example, a very specific, example I'm thinking of is typically when you're sending into Amazon or Walmart, you're sending in bulk amount of units, right? But the inventory caps this year showed us that we have to be able to break outside of our normal case packs, for example, or my normal like truckload or container that I'm sending. And if you don't have the facility or the manpower or the desire to go outside of what your normal process is there, we saw a lot of brands get stuck there, just not having the capacity to kind of move outside of the normal production line that they have. So I think, yes, being able to diversify your inventory, how you're shipping it out, the partners you have, but also like how you can get smaller orders out faster.
So now you make a really good point, which is around how do you get smaller orders out faster? And typically shipping of inventory has happened to large warehouses, maybe in some centralized location in the middle of America. How would that change if you have to get smaller orders out to customers quicker? How do you get that product closer to your customer? How will the fulfillment industry have to change to adapt to these new consumer behaviors that we're seeing?
I think that's where having multiple partners comes into play. I mean, there are there are tons of different facilities and warehouses that are already all over the world. And I think being able to tap into them and take advantage of them, doing your research to understand like what makes sense for your customer base. And again, I said this a lot of times, but being able to be nimble and pivot, like as your customer base changes, so too do you. So finding a partner who has a vast array of warehouses and multiple locations will be important. And again, somebody who can be nimble in that production line.
And I think
I
the
agree.
abilities of
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. And there's also this new trend around local fulfillment, local logistics as opposed to the large, big logistics providers that have been out there, for many, many years. And this new trend has been emerging around, utilizing warehouse spaces that are closer to where your customers are, utilizing, warehouses that were potentially office spaces before, but now using them as fulfillment facilities. And so we're seeing a little bit of that. We're seeing a bunch of local logistics companies prop up that are taking advantage of some of the capacity constraints that exist right now as it relates to getting product to customers. Any thoughts on local logistics versus more centralized large logistics?
just that it's really in the response to not having enough of it based upon the customer demand in 2020. So I think those people are positioning themselves well, and it'll really help us get product to consumers faster. It gives us more options, which is great.
Yeah, I think, Kelsey, your point on just working with multiple partners who are able to support both a local option, a more centralized option, and just being able to diversify your logistics strategy or fulfillment strategy is going to be so critical for brands to consider.
And it will be an investment up front too. For most brands, I would think it would be an investment of both time and potentially monetary resources to get yourself set up with multiple partners like that. But I don't even think it would take a pandemic to make that worth it as we go forward, just seeing how many people really are shifting to online shopping.
That's right. Now, there was another point that you mentioned, I think it was a little earlier, around how important retention of the customer is, and as it relates to maybe a competitive differentiator, because they have so many options now. They can go and shop on Amazon, and there's so many products flooded onto their face. So how do you think brands should, how do you think they should strategize around retention? And is retention now becoming a lot more important as part of their strategy, as opposed to just selling each and every product on a transaction like basis like they did before? What's your view on retention?
I think retention is getting increasingly more important as more and more brands emerge. It costs so much money to acquire that first customer. So anything you can do to keep them within your flywheel is very important. So subscription services, if you're, a consumable or reusable product, that is a very easy way to just have them, set up their 6 months for subscriptions. They kind of set it and forget it, an auto renew program, so that they never leave your ecosystem for the product that you're selling. I think it's going to be increasingly more important as we have more and more entrants on the marketplaces. And if you think about it too, you don't get to touch, you don't get to feel, you don't get to have that in-person experience to truly understand what you're getting. So they're looking at it online, and if they don't know what the competitors look like, they're probably going to like your product. Like, there's not a lot that could deter them from it. So setting up that subscription is just a really easy way to get them to continue to buy and not even think about what the competitor landscape looks like out there.
Yeah, and your point makes sense because of the rising costs of advertisements on the platform as well, right? It's like you're anyway spending so much to acquire the customer, you might as well do that once and then give them the right experience to retain them over a longer lifetime. Your thoughts, Kelsey?
Yeah, I agree. I was just going to say, for not all brands are going to be able to have a subscription service. It's just not going to make sense for the product type that they have. But there are, and again, there are costs to this. It is an investment, but there are retargeting ads that not only on like Amazon or the major players, but just off of Amazon as well. Just making sure you are retargeting your customers. I think, if you're not a brand that has like a subscriptions type model or where it would make sense for that, your brand most likely has products that complement each other or are within the same realm of what your customer purchased. And so making sure that they have that awareness and that knowledge is huge, because it's very likely that I, as a customer, landed on the first product I bought of yours because that's what I was looking for. But if I had a good experience with the product, with the, unboxing or the packaging of the product when I got it, and ultimately it's what I was looking for, I have the potential to be committed to that brand in that moment. I just need to be made aware of what other products you have out there. So there's a lot of ways to do that. Retargeting, as I mentioned, making sure you're tapping into your email base and reminding your customers what you have. It doesn't need to be a subscription model, but you can offer, discounts in some cases for trying additional products. There are a lot of ways to do it, but I think the gist, or I guess a long way of what I'm saying is, you have to make sure your customers know about your brand. You cannot expect that they found one of your products and understand the entire brand story from there. You have to work a little bit to show them that, whether it's upfront in how you position your products on marketplaces or it's through some of these retargeting efforts.
Yeah, and you make, Kelsey, to your original point on, having your own website and, being able to build a brand presence there. Maybe even that's a view on having a website, right? It helps you, get email addresses. You can target your customers through discounts or through offers and tell them about something going on Amazon. So you can create an entire online ecosystem outside of just Amazon, for example.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And unfortunately,
Now
that is the hard part about the marketplaces is you don't get a lot of that customer data. They're not your customer to retarget to. So to that point, it really does kind of put a more important emphasis on having that direct website or having that social media where you can tap into a customer base that is yours.
That's right. That's right. Now, I'm a tech guy, and I always try to keep in touch with the future of technology and how that applies to consumer behavior, shopping, etc. Now, there's a lot of talk about voice powered shopping through like Alexa, for example, and the use of virtual reality and augmented reality to go and touch and feel products by sitting in your own home. How do you think tech is going to play an important role in how consumers shop in the future? And does that open up more channels for them to shop at? And how does that also impact brands post, these trends that we're seeing in consumer behaviors? What are your thoughts on tech?
Oh, it's a harder one for me. So I'm not usually the first to adopt these tech ways. But I know that there is a market that has that, right? Like if you think about, I think it was called like the Amazon pods where you would like put these little buttons around your house and you would hit the button whenever you needed to refill. That was years ago, but now I can definitely see the importance and I'd probably adopt that. So I think that out of the gate, you'll have a very targeted customer base. You'll have to get the rest of us up to speed, but it's just giving the customer it's just an easier way for the customer to purchase or giving them more information about the product so they can make that informed purchase. So I think like anything, brands will have to keep an eye on it. They'll have to learn about it and they'll have to adopt it. And traditionally what we see are the early adopters with any of these ways, whether it's a marketplace or a direct website or social media, if it's the new up and coming platform, they're the ones that typically succeed. They stake their claim early on and they get their customers to follow, and then it's kind of hard to keep up with them from there. So while maybe me as a consumer, I'm not quite there yet, I would definitely advocate that brands are heavily, involved in watching the trends and starting the process to be a part of those new ways of shopping.
I agree. I mean, I'm not going to be shopping through my Alexa anytime soon. I can't get her to play the right song I'm thinking of most of the time, but I do and I know that these things exist and I've seen them. I've seen the ability to take a photo of a piece of furniture and like put it in your own house. And I think that is amazing. I think it is so cool, but I'm still personally trying to catch up to like the touch and feel aspect that we're still trying to mimic. But what I will say is I think it's inevitable that we will get there. I think shoppers will adopt it. Even Megan and I, when we're sitting here saying not yet, but I think that we've seen in the last year some really like progressive steps to get there. And some of the examples are all of the curb shopping that we can do, or the groceries that we've been talking about. Those apps and the changes that they have made so quickly to make them so user friendly, and that those UIs are like exactly what they needed at that time, shows me that we have the capability to get there quickly. I think that this will accelerate it, but I think that we're still kind of making up some of the gap until we get there.
Yeah, if at all, some of these things, what they'll do is they'll just improve the customer experience, which they are. They're giving customers more options. And all that's going to do is it's going to spike up more demand for products on marketplaces or wherever your presence is, which again means that your supply chain has to keep up with the spikes in demand that you probably see on the front end, and the cycle sort of continues. And so, I think this trends that we've all talked about today, that they just all come together in one circular fashion at some level, right? Which is demand's going to continue to increase through more retention, through newer channels of shopping, through an omni-channel approach. Logistics is going to be a differentiator. Your brand as an entirety has to be considered. And those are sort of, putting it all together in one shot, in my opinion. So, Kelsey, Megan, I want to thank you for your thoughts today. I really appreciate you coming onto the show. It was really good to get your views. You guys are experts in this space, and being able to share that with our listeners and our viewers here is critical. So thank you once again for coming on the show, and I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you again on the show soon.
Yeah.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Kunal. So great.
Talk to you soon.
Well, great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in another episode of Master the Marketplace. We will see you again very soon in a few weeks. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Through conversations with experts in online retail, with years of marketing, compliance, and inventory management experience, we seek to empower our listeners to master the marketplace. Thanks for listening. We hope to see you next time on Master the Marketplace with Caspian.